Good afternoon, everyone. This is Queenie Clem with Queenie's Book Talk and Reviews, and I am your literary ambassador. And today I have on my channel Akima Marshall. Welcome, Akima. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Miss Queenie?
Fine, fine. All right. Tell us a little about yourself.
So my name is Akima Marshall. I am an educator, science educator here in Prince George's County, Maryland. I've actually been teaching for about 21 years. I went to South Carolina State University, and I just began writing because I saw a need. I saw that a lot of the publishers' materials didn't really work for our students, especially African-American students, Hispanic students, female students don't really see themselves in those books. So I've always been one to create my own materials. So I just decided to come up to make a book from it. Illustrator is also another South Carolina State graduate. His name is Robert Generette, and he illustrated the book for me.
Genre?
Basically, this book is for teenagers, young adults who are struggling in school. I give them study skills and I give them information about science. It can also be for upper elementary school kids who are advanced and need more information about, this book would be about biology.
Oh, okay. When did you realize you wanted to be an author?
Oh, very early on. When I was in elementary school, you know, I excelled in reading, English classes, social studies. I always liked to write. My parents were in the military, so I spent a lot of time all over the country, in different countries, actually. And so I spent a lot of time writing, you know, because when you first go to the schools, you don't really know anybody. So I spent a lot of time writing, journaling during that time.
Okay. What do you think the difference is between an author and a writer?
Oh my goodness. Author, I would say, has a love for, is invested in it, has a love for it. Even if it doesn't quite work out, they're still going to write. A writer may just feel like this is a job, a means to an end. This is what I have to do, you know. But an author, even if no one reads it, is still going to write. And many times prolifically they will write, you know, just because they have to, they feel the need, they have that creative energy, and they have to get it out.
Okay. How long does it take you to write a book?
For me, it depends. I do a lot of writing during the summer when I have time off. And so it's hard to gauge, like if I were to try to do that during the regular school year, but during the summer, I got the time to just spend a week on one subject. So this really only took me like maybe 2 to 3 weeks to write, but then I had to edit it. Then I had to test it out a little bit with my students, which I did like the following semester to see, okay, this works, this doesn't work. So that was more like a 6-month process just to get it right.
What is your work schedule like when you are writing?
I like to, I don't write during the week too much because I'm focused on my students. So a lot of times, like Saturday mornings, like right now, is when I do the bulk of my writing. I like to just, after the week, I like to kind of reflect on what I taught and to see, okay, what worked, what didn't work, and if I have anything that I would like to create to address my student needs. And so, yeah, I spend a lot of time thinking about that on Saturdays.
When writing your book, where do you get your information from, or your ideas?
I generally get my information or my ideas from things that don't necessarily work out for me teaching. And so I figure, okay, especially with different groups like your special education students, I figure, okay, well, this might be a better way. This is how I can present, like say if I'm teaching diffusion, I'll say, okay, this is one way that I can present this topic to them. And I usually go off of the questions that they ask me. and then I present the lesson after that. So a lot of my best ideas come from failed lessons, and I just come up with better material.
Okay, this is a question that just popped up.
Mm-hmm.
And a science teacher, do you have like a website that other teachers, science teachers, can go on and maybe
Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm.
from you? Okay, okay.
I do. I have Miss Marshall's World, which is basically like a 10-year-old website that I have. I also have social media that teachers can use. Science for Me, Boss is my Facebook, and then I have Science for All Learners, which is my Instagram that they can use. But basically, if they were to just email me and ask me, is there something that you have that can address this need? I'll see what I could do for them.
Okay. Okay, let's talk about your book.
Yes.
Tell us about your book. Show us your book.
Oh, okay. So this is my first book called Science for Me. Can you see the whole thing? Yeah. Science for Me. This book is, I think it's 40 pages. And in this book, basically, I discuss study skills because I find that a lot of students they have no idea where to begin, how they learn. They can tell you how they don't learn or what they don't like, but they need a strategy just to even approach the classroom. So I start there. Then I go into some topics that I know are on a lot of different science-based tests. So I go into the scientific method, and I break it down to something that I feel like they can even discover at home. I have some labs that are in the book actually using different household materials. So discuss like the cell, and I try to make it simple, something that is more of a pragmatic approach, more practical, so students can understand it. And I briefly discuss also the atom for them, and I give them a couple different test taking strategies. A lot of times they just give up, and we're in an age where there's a lot of testing, so they have to have a game plan going in. And I often tell my students, you have to go in with the idea that you're going to pass the test. And questions, even if the words sound big, you need to go towards those words that sound familiar to you, that you may have heard either that year or in a previous grade level. And you got to know prefixes, suffixes, words. That's always helpful. So I've had a lot of success with students, them the practical way of approaching science. And I think for our students, African American students, they need to see themselves in these science books, and they need to see themselves in science-based careers. Because I went to South Carolina State University, that was you always saw people, like yourself, with advanced science degrees. So it wasn't a big deal. But working, in this area, the DMV, the students may not necessarily have access to those professionals. Unless you invite them into your school building, the students don't really get to see them as much. So I like to just give them as much as I can to help them to encourage them to pursue careers in science.
Okay. What do you do when you're not writing?
I love to travel. Actually thinking about where I plan on going this summer right now. I'm thinking about, and this is totally off subject, but I've never been to Essence Fest, and I want to take my mom on a vacation. She doesn't go anywhere. She lives right there in Charlotte. And so I'm trying to get that together right now. I'm also thinking about doing something for authors, but I'm not sure exactly. I'm debating whether to go to like the Black Enterprise. They have something for entrepreneurs. And there's a National Black Writers Conference. I'm debating what to do. So it's all in the planning stages, but I need to get it together because plane tickets are going up right now. So.
What do you think makes a good story?
A good story. Well, I'm more of a nonfiction person, but I am, when I read, I think if you were to ask me, what is my favorite book? I think you did. In your questions, I wrote down The Bluest Eye. And for me, I read that book as an adult, but it was so gripping to me because of the fact that that still exists. That young lady, the young ladies I have in my class are still struggling with the same things that that little girl was struggling with this day, you know, and so they try to make themselves this ideal, and they're already beautiful, you know. And so what makes a good story? It has to just grab you. It has to be something that you feel personally. And I feel like Toni Morrison was just so good at that. It was almost
Yes.
how good she was at that. So she's one. And I also enjoy, my mother was a big, and she still is a big Alice Walker fan. And I would read a lot of Alice Walker as a child. Probably it was a little too grown for me, but I tell her there's a lot of life lessons in those stories.
Yes.
And even, and as an adult, when I go back and I read, I'm like, this is for real. This stuff is still going on now. So yeah, Alice Walker again, because my family is from Charleston, you know, and there's so much there as far as the heritage and as far as the stories that your grandparents tell you, the culture and those things passed down. So my family is rich in those details. And it's still that when I read those types of authors, I see that in my family still to this day. Even the land, you know, we could trace it back to when we got here. So those are my two favorites. I just feel like a story just has to get inside of you, your life.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
What has been the hardest thing about writing a book?
Oh, goodness. Just being consistent, following through with your plan. If you want to be self-published, or if you want to, you know, go another route, you just have to follow through. It's great to have the vision. I think most people, most professionals even, or just regular folks, they have a story in them, but it takes time for you to actually sit down and plan it out and write it out and then market it to everybody. So it's a long process. And I appreciate you inviting me because you're part of my process now. And I thank you for it.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is all a part of it.
What's the best way to market books?
Miss Queen, I don't, you know, there's a lot of ways. Of course, you have the social media now. You have Facebook, you have Instagram, but I think also locally, at anything that's like, for instance, it's Black History Month. You might want to go out to any events that that need vendors and there. Of course, you have the opportunity as an author to go to your local libraries and bookstores to promote. Parents and families are always looking for ways for their child to do better in math and science.
Yes.
So I really don't have to push it that hard, but I have to put myself in places to find my parents, you know. So and that takes time. So I would say just do the social media, do the website, but also do events locally, and make sure you plan it out because it can be costly. So you have to see what is in your budget.
Do your family support you as an author?
Yes, they do. The science sometimes is above their head, you know, but they appreciate it, you know, and they understand the need.
What motivates you to write?
My students, and just knowing that they can learn it, but they get presented in a way that is comfortable, familiar, and where they are represented. You know, if they see themselves represented, then they you know, they enjoy it. They don't fight as hard when they see themselves where, oh, okay, did you write this, Miss Marshall? I always get that. And I put the publisher's materials. I don't ever tell them. I put the publisher's materials and they just don't, you know, warm up to it the same way. Teacher created materials are always nice at any classroom.
Yes.
Teachers that are able, you know, to write definitely should.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
What do you enjoy and or hate about the writing process?
Probably editing, because I'm one who can over edit, really. And so that it will sound completely different by the time I get through editing. So editing definitely is, sometimes it's best to have somebody else look at it, but you don't really want to change the tone. So it's tricky. It's a tricky process.
What has been your best accomplishment thus far as a writer?
Oh, I would say just being able to complete this book, being able to present it to different audiences is my biggest achievement. I'm still working with it, and I plan to do more writing in the future. So we'll see. I definitely plan on putting more time into it because I feel like it's worth it.
Will you be writing like novels, like romance or any other genre?
I thought about it, but I'm not sure, Miss Queenie. I may. I have a couple things in mind, but it's just at the idea stage right now.
Okay, where do you see yourself in the next 5 years?
In the next 5 years, I would like to definitely create more science for me books to help students. I have another book that I'm working on, but it's also nonfiction, called Graceful Teaching. It's just a book that is meant to help teachers that are kind of struggling in their careers, give them ideas. So I'm hoping that I can, do workshops related to science for me and graceful teaching workshops. How I would love to move out of teaching and only have books to promote and travel around the country. That would be great, but we definitely will see. I do have some more ideas.
Where can the readers find you?
You can find me on Facebook at Science for Me Boss, on Instagram at Science for All Learners. My email address is amarshall@scienceforalllearners, small letters all together. And I check everything all the time. If they were to try to DM me, that's fine. On Facebook or Instagram, that's fine.
Okay, you said Mrs. Marshall's page. Where can we find that?
That's on Google. Miss Marshall's World. That's on Google. And yeah, if you just type that in, it definitely should just come up. It's been a number of years.
Is there anything else you would like to say before we close?
No, ma'am. I just like to thank you for taking out your time to help authors through this process market their book. I appreciate that. I appreciate your forum, your interview, your blogs, everything. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, everyone, you heard it from here today. This is Queenie Clem with Queenie's Book Talk and Reviews. Happy reading. See you later. Bye.